Yeah, just working through some of the stuff I posted, I sort of noticed some things where I could be a bit more precise about my statements and broaden some of them. So, I'd started with this 101 pattern because we knew it removed 3 digits and it was the easiest to show. But pretty sure I can generalize from there to that 01 pattern, the second pattern, ending in 01, based on some of the stuff in the other videos. So, I mean, the basic idea is that, if we're doing these cases, right, for growth, we're going to have four of these cases. And I mean, I've shown the other work, but basically there were 3 scenarios, right, where we added 2 digits, like this one, and then there was one scenario over here where we added 1 digit, right? So we had 1, 2, 2, and 2, right? So with this 01, we know because of the 01, we're removing 2 digits. So we have a number that has the same number of digits or less, right? If we have this scenario, like this one was without the carry, so you had 1, 1, and then you're removing 2 here, right? So those 2 will strike off here. Again, we're adding these 2. I'm skipping some steps here, right? Like you're going to add the 1, those are going to turn into zeros, but just for brevity. And then up front here, right, we're going to add 1, 0. We'll make this one the carry. We'll make this one the carry here. And then, yeah, so here we're adding 1 digit, right? Here we're adding 2. And in all of these cases, we're removing 2 digits. But we'll note that this one has 1 fewer total digits, so it must be a smaller number than the previous number. And in these 3, because the next highest place value is 0, right? Like, again, this number 902, right? Like if the 9 here, if I have 0 in the next highest place value, this number has to be less than this one. It's just a feature of a number system. So I can say for any case of growth, doesn't matter what happens, any number of that value will be, of this pattern will be less than the previous one after it goes through the Collatz conjecture. So right away, right, like I've got half of all odd numbers reduce under Collatz as a result. And so, from that statement, you're like, well, the other half, right, is of this pattern, right? Like I flipped this one and some internal pattern. I have one, it's like, well, does it reduce immediately? And in particular, we want to see if this pattern becomes, our pattern up here, this ending in 01, because then we can just put it in the class of reduction, right? So I can't answer that without going to some more digits of the number, right? So we'll have 1, 0, 1, 1, and then we'll have 1, 1, 1, 1, right? And so with this one, we'll just do that little thingamajig. So we have 1, 0, 1, 0, 1, and then a bunch of other stuff happens, and I don't know what happens up at front. Don't really care. I'm going to add my 1, and then I'm going to have a number. It's going to have the following pattern, right? So again, strike off with the n over 2 step, right? Under Collatz, and then I got this pattern, right? So we're back to here, which means that half of these numbers reduce, right? So 1/2 times 1/2 is equal to 1/4, right? And then here, I'm like, well, what happens to these ones? So I need another digit, right? And then 4, right? So if I take this one, what's going to happen if I do the addition? Going to add them. Got 1, and here we have 0, 1, 1, 1, 0. Oops. So then, right, again, we've got the n over 2, knock that off, and then look, I've got a form of number that I know after another step will turn into the 0, 1, right? So I've got half of my other, so I've got half of my quarter, so I have 1/4 times 1/2, right, which is equal to 1/8. And then presumably I could repeat this process ad infinitum, right? And here I would have 5, 1, right? And I would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then on the other side, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then after a step, this one would become, this pattern here, which becomes this pattern here, which becomes this pattern here, right? And so what you have is this, I think it should be apparent. I mean, I can run through the argument in greater detail if people want, but hopefully it's sort of apparent. But you're building this geometric series, right? And so this is the sum from, oops, did that on the wrong line. From n equals 1 to infinity of 1 over 2 to some power n, right? And I mean, it's pretty apparent that that becomes 1, right? So like I could keep splitting off. There'd be more two more here, and I could keep building more terms. Yeah, I hope everybody sees that. I think it should be pretty trivial to see. I guess the other question is like, well, what happens if I have a string of numbers that's all 1, right? Like, I don't know, 15 here, right? Well, so just go like that, and then 1. Yeah, let me strike off the n over 2. So even if you have a string of all numbers, this tripling of the number here introduces a 0 into your string, right? You'll notice that you have 4 ones total in the number, but you've sort of inserted a 0 in there. And I can tell that after 3 steps, right, like 1, 2, 3 steps through the Collatz conjecture, I'm going to run into that 0, 1 pattern, and it'll reduce. Now, what I want to say is that via sort of a recursive argument, this shows that any odd number under the Collatz conjecture must eventually reduce. I'm pretty confident that's not the case and that I've made a mistake somewhere. And so if somebody notices that I've made a mistake, or there's an argument in my logic that would be very nice. I'm sure I'm missing some case, or there's some subtle point that I've made a mistake on. And yeah, it'd be neat to know where I made that mistake, because math is fun to learn things. But yeah, I think it's pretty neat here that you can sort of seem to have laid out a construction where you can show that I think at least most of these numbers must collapse, right? And just to be clear about the recursive argument, I think there's another probably much more complicated proof somewhere where my understanding of it is that it's been shown that if you have a seed number S, and that if you show that for every seed number S, there is at some point in Collatz, I don't know, a value Q less than S, right? After you apply the Collatz function some number of times, then if you can show that for all S, this property holds, then you've proven the Collatz conjecture. Yeah, like I say, given the number of people who've made claims about that stuff, I don't want to do that because odds are I made a mistake, and it would be really nice to have somebody point out that mistake to me. Yeah, hopefully what I've said is clear. It's clear to me, but that's not, always a great arbiter of truth. Anyways, I've enjoyed putting these together. I think I'll just sort of keep them up because they're fun notes to myself about the work that I did. And if somebody wants to take the time to go through them, I'd really appreciate that. Thanks a lot. Have a good day.